Today, we're going to dive into a principle that is just absolutely foundational. Seriously, it's one of those things that can completely flip the script on how you live out your faith. And the idea is this: true, life-altering revolution is personal property. Just let that sink in for a second. Revelation is personal property. This isn't just some catchy phrase, It's a core truth that, based on what we're looking at today, is the line between a casual believer and an unstoppable one. It's what separates a spiritual tourist from a true spiritual giant. So what does that actually look like in real life? Well, this slide breaks it down perfectly. You've got these two paths, right? On one side, there's the spiritual tourist. They're living on borrowed truth, coasting on great sermons and conference highs. But then you have the spiritual giant. They're living on revelation they've personally fought for and owned. Look, it doesn't matter how many amazing teachers you listen to. Borrowed truth just won't sustain you forever. It's kind of like trying to keep your lamp burning with oil you got from a friend. Sooner or later, in your own darkest night, you are going to run out. Or think of it this way. You can admire someone else's strength, right? You can be inspired by their weapon, by their victory. But when your own personal battle shows up at your door, you can't win it with a story about somebody else's sword. You've got to have your own. And finally, when you're the one facing confusion, when you're in the dark, you can't navigate that with someone else's light. Their clarity isn't going to light up your path. You need a light that is yours. So the big question is, how do we get our own? Well, this brings us to one of the best examples of this entire principle, Moses. See, Moses wasn't satisfied with just seeing what God did. He was desperate to understand how God thought. He wanted God's ways. And the scriptures point out this really fascinating difference. The entire nation of Israel, they saw God's actions, the miracles, the food from heaven, the sea splitting in two. But to Moses, God revealed his ways, the why behind the what, his very nature, his heart. So why the difference? It's because of this. This was the cry of Moses' heart. He didn't ask for a highlight reel or a summary of doctrines. He prayed this deeply personal, gut-level prayer: teach me your ways, so that I may know you. It was a cry for relationship, not just for information. And this right here is the key. Revelation isn't something that just sort of passively shows up. The source material is clear. It's given to the person who demands it with hunger. It doesn't just float into a casual heart. It's the answer to a desperate cry. Okay, so let's look at the flip side. What actually happens when we try to build our lives on a foundation that isn't really ours? This next part is all about the danger, the real danger of borrowed light. So what even is borrowed truth? It's all those convictions, all that faith, all those cool insights you've heard from other people. And they might sound great. You might even agree with them, but they haven't been personally burned onto the tablet of your heart by God himself. And here's the unavoidable, brutal reality of it. You can always tell when a truth is just borrowed, because the second real pressure comes, a trial, a temptation, a genuine crisis of faith, that borrowed truth just collapses. It has no roots. It has no foundation inside of you to stand on. But there is another way. So let's pivot to the incredible alternative, the life of the unshakable believer. A life that is built on the rock-solid power of revelation that you actually own. This is the difference right here. It's the moment a truth moves from being just a note in your journal to being a fire in your spirit. When God himself writes it on your heart. When that happens, there is no storm that can break you, no lie that can shake you. So look at the results when this happens. When revelation becomes your property, temptation, it just loses its power. Compromise, it starts to feel disgusting. And your spiritual life just transforms. Obedience feels natural. Prayer becomes like oxygen. The word opens up like a living portal. And on the inside, fear dissolves. The devil actually loses his jurisdiction over your life. The moment a truth becomes yours, it becomes something more. It becomes a weapon you can actually fight with. It's a shield to defend yourself. It's a compass to guide your steps. And it's a fire that fuels your passion and purifies your heart. So this all brings us to the most important part of our whole conversation today. This is your personal call to ownership. It's an invitation to shift from being a passive consumer of spiritual content to an active, hungry seeker of God. And this slide illustrates perfectly why that shift is so critical. The enemy of your soul, he doesn't mind you watching sermons. He doesn't mind you consuming content all day long, but he absolutely panics. He trembles the moment you get on your knees and start seeking God for yourself. The moment you cry out, "Teach me your ways." Here's the bottom line, plain and simple. Listening to someone else's revelation, it can be inspiring, and that's a good thing, but inspiration fades. Only revelation, your own personal encounter with truth, is what actually transforms you. So the call to action for us today isn't to go memorize more sermons or just repeat what somebody else said. No, the real invitation is to get alone, to kneel down, and to pray the exact same words that Moses prayed out there in the desert. And this is that prayer. Lord, teach me your ways until this truth becomes mine. It's a prayer for ownership. It's a plea for God to take a concept and make it a conviction, to take a doctrine and make it a fire in your soul. So as we wrap this up, just remember what revelation is not. It's not public property, just lying around for anyone to pick up. It's not community property, owned by a whole group. And it is definitely not borrowed property, something you can just use for a bit and then return. No, it is, and it always will be personal property. It has to be sought after, received, and owned by you. And when God gives it to you, nobody can ever take it away. And you will never be the same. So I'm going to leave you with this question. Now that you know the path to an unshakable faith, are you going to settle for just living in borrowed light? Or are you going to pick up a shovel and begin digging your own well? The choice, as always, is yours.